And welcome to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollack, your host for this segment. One of our running segments, new segments, where do we go from here? Set of programs. We had town board members on last week, immediately after the lovely meeting we had where they were some members of the audience tried to arrest the town board members. So where do we go from here? The next town board meeting went quite well. Unfortunately, fortunately, none of the people that tried to arrest them at the first meeting were there a couple nights ago. So that one got done rather quickly. We had one agenda item on the town board agenda that we want to address today, and that is, at issue is from the June 26th meeting, was discussion of possible decision to approve a letter of support for the Nye County Water District, NCWD, application for the Bureau of Reclamation for a Water Smart Applied Science Grant funding opportunity announcement, blah, blah, blah. Well, we won't go into the announcement. But we have with us today the director from the NWRPO, Nye County Repository Project Office.
Yeah.
Took me years to get that. And Tim McCall from the Nye County Water District, NCWD.
Right.
So they're going to give us some information on what was involved with this request. The request sort of, I think Vicki Parker said, it didn't get put off. It was just simply no motion. That the well owners on the board and the audience objected because they believe Nye County plans to do. So we'll ask these gentlemen some questions about what the misinformation out there is. So Daryl or Tim, if you want to explain to us what the agenda item is and what actually you guys are asking for, which is a letter of support, I believe, from the town, and what the application for the what is it? What's it called?
Applied Water Science Grant.
Explain what that is and where you'd like to go with that, please.
Okay. Well, first, just a little overview. I'm the director of the Nuclear Waste Repository Project Office. I'm also the general manager of the Water District on a part-time basis, one of the multiple hats that I'm wearing now recently. The Water District was, and already has applied for a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation for some water science.
That's Nevada Bureau?
It's the United States Bureau of Reclamation, a federal grant.
It's a federal grant, okay.
This would be the third grant that we've had from the feds. Groundwater Evaluation Grant was one that Nye County had received, and we used part of that grant to help set up the Water District. Mm-hmm. Then we currently have a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation that we're using for countywide water resources inventory, essentially, trying to look at all of the municipal wells in the county, all of the water systems, the quality issues in regards to that, how well are we meeting those water quality standards, mm-hmm. those types of things. And then this was a new grant opportunity that came up for this Applied Water Science Grant. It was consistent with some of the things that we were currently doing, and it's always good if we can get federal grants to help pay for things without forcing the taxpayers of Nye County to have to pay for it. So we've always used the philosophy that it's good to go out and get grants when they are available and they help support things that we're currently trying to do.
These aren't matching? These are just, do we have to match them?
We have to do a partial match of this one, which we could primarily do with the in-kind match, they call it, which is the existing labor and staff time that we're currently putting into these water science programs anyways.
Okay.
And Levi Kreider is our geoscience manager and our natural resources manager for Nye County, and is in charge of our water science program anyway. So he was going to be the project manager for this grant if we get it. And all we're doing is applying for the grant. We applied for the grant anyways. We were not asking the permission from the town of Pahrump. We just wanted a letter of support. That's kind of standard, and it's a common courtesy that most of our local government entities do around here. And maybe a quick civic lesson is that the Water District is a different political entity from the Nye County. It was set up in 2007 by the Nevada State Legislature.
Right.
It has its own governing board, of which Tim sits as one of the members of the governing board, and it is, totally separate and distinct from the Nye County government, even though the boundaries of the Nye County Water District are the same boundaries as, Nye County government. We work well together. The county has certain things that they have powers and authority to do. The Water District has certain things that they have authority to do. Some of it overlaps. But the bottom line is the town of Pahrump doesn't have any of those authorities. Those are, we were just asking for a letter of support for a grant application. We weren't asking for their permission as to whether we could do this water science, and we're going to do it anyways. That's,
Okay.
there's just...
It's great to have the town on board, since you're going to be studying us.
The primary part of the study is from
It isn't
Basin 162.
wasn't this basin because it is the most stressed basin in the state of Nevada, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So the Water Smart Applied Science Grant is going to conduct a study of resources of the valley, and it's going to expand NCWD's, Nye County Water District's existing water resources database, and incorporate web-based visualization tools to better understand and communicate historical, current, and future water resource conditions. So I would think it was good to know what's happened in the past, what we're doing now, and what's going to happen in the future, because there's other people that have their eyes on us, or they have in the past. I remember some water grabs that we had issues with from Las Vegas that we were really scared.
Well, it's still a ongoing issue. The Southern Nevada Water Authority currently, or Las Vegas Valley Water District currently have water applications in Nye County, so, but not in the Pahrump Valley, but it's more in the Railroad Valley area of northeast Nye
So
County.
that's still standing?
Those applications are still outstanding there. They've not been ruled on by the state engineer.
No education yet by the
Okay.
Division of Water Resources.
So that's something in the offing that we should be concerned about?
Well, that's something the Nye County Water District is very concerned about, and one of the reasons that we need to do good water science is so that we understand all of the components of a perennial yield calculation that the state engineer looks at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's common sense to people understand that the snowfall up in the mountains and the precipitation in this valley eventually end up in the water basin that we all use for our drinking water here.
Which is called the alluvial, which is just like a big bowl.
Well, a simplified basis, it's like a bathtub.
Bathtub, okay.
Every drop of water that we use in Nye County comes from groundwater. We don't have any river water or anything like that coming into here. Like Las Vegas is pretty much exclusively supplied by the Colorado River. A little bit of groundwater, but mostly the Colorado River. Nye County's totally different. Everything that we have here comes from our wells.
I think there's still just a tiny bit of misinformation from when what is it, PR, who told everybody we had the world's third largest?
I think preferred equity.
Preferred equities, yeah. I'm trying to forget those names.
That was back in the 70s, 71.
And people still believe that maybe 10 years ago, and it's slowly dying down.
No, there's still people out
There's
there
still a
that
few?
are espousing that. I know I had one the other day and had to explain
I sat on some meetings with the community assessment just a few months ago, and there were people that made that statement in those meetings just a few months ago. So there's a lot of misinformation out there that we have to try and educate people to get past. And bottom line is the state engineer is the official agency that adjudicates water rights in Nevada. And he adjudicates water rights based on something called the perennial yield of a basin. And the perennial yield is essentially what water is left for use after you figure out what rainfall evaporates and what goes to your trees and what flows out of the basin downstream to the next basin, and those types of things. And essentially the official number that the state engineer uses today is 12,000 acre feet per year.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there are almost 80,000 acre feet of claims on that water.
Right, but not everybody's claiming it. Those people aren't sucking it out.
They're not pumping it today, but that's people who think they have a right to that water. And one portion of that is the domestic wells, but there's also a lot of water rights in the valley as well that people, have as a, almost a property
as well
right.
as the utilities, et cetera, who hold a rather substantial amount.
Right, the three private utility companies in the valley all have significant amounts of water rights in their portfolio. And then there are individuals that have water rights primarily from the days when a lot of agriculture was going on here.
And they are aware of the fact that they could lose those, right? So they have to prove them up after.
They have to pump them and put them to beneficial use once every 5 years, essentially, or they're going to have the opportunity to lose those.
Okay, and those people that own them are aware of that, so they make sure that they don't lose them.
The majority, when you get into water rights, there's some out there that have actually lost their water rights because they disagreed that they didn't have to use them. Of course, state engineer, he's mandated to make decisions on that. But the majority of them that have water rights currently that I'm aware of are aware of the use it or lose it law.
Well, I think everybody in Nye County needs to have some basic understanding of water law. One thing the Water District is doing as part of our education and outreach program is this October we're having a local water rights seminar put on by the Nevada Rural Water Association that will be open to everyone here from the Valley to come in and learn the basic water law in the state of Nevada. We'll also have sessions on some of the water science that we're doing and other things. So,
Yeah, make sure the advisory boards know about them, the commissioners, college.
Yeah.
You have intelligent people there, they want to be more intelligent.
Great.
Tell them, come over there.
We're all for people to get educated on
Yeah.
this water system because there's definitely a lot of misperceptions out there and conspiracy theories and other things. And some of these people don't seem to be too interested in getting the truth. They just want to be able to run their mouth off and make wild claims on things.
Well, those seem to grow legs, and they're sexier than the actual boring.
Yeah, the truth is boring, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I worked with that years ago when I worked for the Yucca Mountain Project. I would expound on what's on the paperwork here, but it wasn't really sexy, compared to, do you realize what's going to happen if this tips over and this leaks out? And nothing could really leak out. But like you just said, the misconceptions are more sexier than the actual boring paper truth.
And when you get into the water issues, the water resource issues, and the water quality issues, Nye County is a big place. And we need to have as good a science as we can to make our decisions so that we understand the issues involved. And, on a simplified basis, we talked about the valley being kind of like a bathtub. But it's more complicated than that because there are geologic structures that kind of separate various areas. And if you look at the water levels in the valley today, in some areas they're rising, in some areas they're dropping. So it's not just like a bathtub. There's a lot more that goes into it.
There are actually old springs starting to flow again.
Right. It's sometimes it's logical, sometimes it's illogical.
Well, this is what
We just have to understand why. There's a reason behind all of it.
To try to understand better, so that if the state engineer under Assembly Bill 419, I don't know if you're aware of that, it gives him certain authorities over designated basins, which we are. And there has to be a groundwater plan in place, which the Water District's working on. And it gets kind of complicated, but the bottom line is the state engineer, and I can quote right out of the enabling legislation here. And this is, so you understand from my point of view, and I'm just one board member.
Okay.
And I think, quote Harley the other night at that meeting, that he's been on wells most of his life. I have drilled wells all over the western United States for developing ranches and commercial development. I mean, I can remember areas where a well got 2.5 gallons a minute. We considered it a good well.
Okay.
So I'm aware of water conservation, and I believe in wells, but except as otherwise provided in Section 7, the state engineer shall conduct investigation in any basin or portion thereof where it appears the average annual replenishment, which is your
Perennial yield.
to the groundwater supply may not be adequate for the needs of all the permittees and all vested water right claimants.
Right.
And if the findings of the state engineer so indicate, the state engineer may order that withdrawals, including without limitation, withdrawals from domestic wells be restricted to conform to priority rights. So, that being said, that's just one part of this. This is
a new law that went into effect in the last legislative session.
And there's a lot more in here.
And it has nothing to do with you. That's what this
This is the state can do.
But this is a state engineer. This has nothing to do with us, but the state engineer within here, if we have a good groundwater plan, it can show that we're in balance or getting close to balance, then he has no reason to come in. So these are why these are very, very important. It's not that we're trying to cap anybody's wells. We're trying to prevent this type of a situation from being enacted.
So it'll give the local water district the opportunity to put in place a workable plan, so that the state engineer doesn't have to come in with his hammers and start plugging wells.
It brings me back, it's like we did some years ago with the air quality issues with the NDEP, because they could have come down real hard on us,
Right.
but they worked with us. We made a good plan to monitor and to keep the dust down, and they worked with us, and so the hammer wasn't heavy at
Well,
all.
local control is always better than having someone else, because I guarantee you, when the state or the federal agencies come in to regulate something, they just come in with a big hammer, and it's a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, and it's just going to create animosity and, yeah.
So see, a lot of the things that you hear about us capping wells and stuff, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to prevent anything of that nature, or, new wells need to be drilled for domestic use. We don't want the state engineer to say, based on priority, you can't drill a well. That would not only hurt the growth of the valley, it would be detrimental to people that are already existing here.
Okay, before I forget that too, Vicki had 4 questions that she gave us.
Okay.
Can we address those?
Sure.
Before we run out of time. Let's see, the audience objected because they believe Nye County plans to, number 1, buy Hafen's Water Company, Tim Hafen, longtime landowner, owns a lot of water rights, has a water quality plant, has a wastewater treatment plant. So what do you know about this?
Well, one, Hafen Utilities there's 3 private utilities in the Pahrump Valley. The Pahrump Utility Company, which is owned by the Hafens, is one of those utilities. At this stage right now, the Nye County government is currently doing due diligence on that. The Hafens have approached the county and offered to sell that water company to Nye County. And the county is doing their due diligence to see what the system looks like, and at some point in time, the Board of County Commissioners may make a decision to buy that water company. I don't know. That's not, the water district is monitoring the process. We kind of have a routine agenda item to discuss it, because in most cases, the Board of County Commissioners will ask the water district for their recommendation on water issues. And under the enabling legislation, the water district could actually own and operate that water company, but at this stage, the water district doesn't have the money to buy something like that. But so right now, the Board of County Commissioners is looking at this. Where it's going to go, I don't know.
Okay, but that's something that's on the books prior to you, that you have nothing to do with that at this time. Number 2, create a municipal water district. You just touched on it.
The Nye County Water District is a municipal water district. It's a Nye County-wide water district. That's what we are.
Okay, true.
That's all, and the legislature formed this in 2007. So,
Right. Okay. It was established in 2007 by passage of State Bill 222. Okay.
It shows up as Chapter 542 of the special statutes of the state of Nevada, if anyone wants to go look that up.
Approved June 18, 2007.
Okay. Number 3, monitor citizens' private well water usage.
We currently, one of our water science issues is to understand where the water is going in the valley. As we mentioned before, there's 12,000 acre-feet of perennial yield that the state engineer has ruled on. We think there's more than that, but we're going to have to prove differently to get the state engineer to change it. He's not going to just take our opinion.
Right.
We're going to have to use sound scientific methods to show differently. So you have several numbers that show up in this process. One is the water supply, evaporation, water usage, and one of the pieces here is the domestic wells. We have a volunteer metering program ongoing. We're not trying to go out and force people to put meters on their well if they don't want to, but there are enough people that understand the need for good water science that have volunteered to us that they would let us put a meter on their well so that we can get a statistically significant number of these out there, so that as we're doing our calculation for water usage in the valley, we know what the average usage of a domestic well is. We're not really worried about specific wells. We're trying to get an average usage for all the wells in the valley.
Well, it just seems odd that I tried to do that for years. I tried to find out who could do that for me, and then your department just casually came down 2 lots over, drilled a sampling well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a huge well. It was too far forward to be a regular domestic well. And so I went over to your department, asked Cheryl, and I said, "Do you know anything about it?" She said, and I forget who she called over.
Levi or John?
Yeah, John, I think it was. Yeah, that's our well. And it tells me how much the level and the actual flow, and it gave me the answers that I was asking for without having to put that on my well. So I want to know what the level is where I live, and how much water I may use in the permeability of the soil. And he says there's a lot of clay that's over there, but for some reason the water flowed very well. So there must be some cracks in the clay.
Well, or sand layers or
Yeah.
gravel layers that do flow well.
But my levels are going down slightly.
Okay, well, yeah, that's part of it. The other part with the quote-unquote monitor or metering wells, there's a total misunderstanding there. A domestic well is entitled to 2 acre-feet a year, 1,800 gallons a day. The state engineer, for a number of years within this basin, has been using on a domestic well a 1 acre-foot pumpage rate.
Okay.
The average person is pumping 1 acre-foot, which is about 325,000 gallons, a little bit over there. The argument is we don't believe so. Well, 2 years ago, the state engineer and his pumpage rates took that from a full acre-foot to a half acre-foot, out of the blue. Now,
And well, it wasn't out of the blue,
Well,
because
but-
we had done some of our water science that provided that number to him, and he,
But by showing that these wells are not even using that much on the average, some people have,
okay.
see, you need an average of what they're pumping. And so when you start talking perennial yield versus withdrawals, if we can show that the average person, a lot of people are conservative on water, especially well owners, because they got to pay to pump it too. And if we can show that they are conserving, but the only way we can do that is to have true volume of water coming out of these wells. And so these people that volunteered understand this, and we're not trying to force anybody to. We're just asking people to help us get some true numbers to at least have a discussion with the state engineer and Division of Water Resources. And
so by understanding that the average usage is closer to half an acre-foot per year, then it shows the valley is under less stress
Then
than it would be if they thought they were.
Yeah.
But this all ties back into this water science, and we can't just shoot our mouths off. We have to do the studies. Whether people want to cooperate or not, that's their choice.
Well, eventually this is going to end up in front of the state engineer or in front of state or federal court on these issues. If we don't have good science,
We've
got nothing.
And you have the numbers of the people with the wells and a good cross-section from saying this is what it is, so your estimations are way off. It's a lower number, and we have the facts here. Just like when I worked at Yucca Mountain talking about, or the Nevada test site, the radionuclei coming off site. You just need more wells for better science to find out if it is.
Right.
Yeah, more wells, more data.
And water science is not cheap,
No.
which is why we're trying to get as many grants as possible. We understand the need for good science, we understand the need for good data, so that we can protect the wells that are, and the people here in Nye County.
And I understand, when we're talking, because this is the Basin 162, the Pahrump Valley, but the same issue at different levels is for all the basins in Nye County. I mean, we're not just looking at at Pahrump with the Nye County Water District. We're looking at Railroad Canyon. We're looking at, all the different basins, Tonopah, 80, everywhere to see if there's any issues. Just to make that clear, it's not just for here.
Yeah, because I'm concerned, because if the water is going down, I want to know how fast it's going down, because my well was put in 1999, and the levels at that time were a little bit higher. I think the levels for a well drilled today is 200 feet or something. It was.
Depends on where you are in the valley.
Is it? But I'm concerned at the rate that it's going down, because it's, if I have some problems with my well and I'm sucking air or something, I'm having problems. I want to know if it's my pump or actually is the groundwater that's going down too. So this tells me what's going on to lots away from me. It tells me what my levels of my groundwater is.
And for our water level monitoring program, we prefer to be in a static well. So going into someone who's pumping the well can impact that water level.
Right. You
So
have the cone.
we try to
Right.
find the cone of depression or whatever you want to call it. So we like to have monitoring wells that are not being used for understanding the water levels in the valley. And one thing that people need to understand, things that are going on right now, is the federal, 98% of the land in Nye County is under federal control.
Whether we like it or not, that's
the way it
facts.
is.
Yeah.
And the federal agencies are very active in the water issues. And through NEPA analysis and other things, everything that we do in this valley almost seems to have an impact in some piece of federal land, which gets us pulled into a NEPA analysis, EIS, environmental impact statement type studies. That water is always one of the components of that environmental impact study. And having good data to support it helps to keep our activities going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because people always will take the conservative approach. Well, if you're using water, then you're going to have an adverse impact on something. And we've been fighting this for 50 years in Amargosa Valley for the Devil's Hole pupfish issues. But within the Pahrump Valley, they've started trying to protect even mesquite trees. So.
Yes. Where underground, but not on the top, because we have the mistletoe on the top that's killing them. We can't touch that. So you're damned if you do, damned if you
Right.
don't.
Well, they seem to, they take the approach that there's a minimum water level that promotes healthy growth of mesquite, and if the water levels drop below a certain level, then they view that as bad.
A few years ago, when I was doing sampling for Tom Bucco, hydrogeologist, I went down Homestead, and there were so many mesquite trees. There were baby mesquite trees that were down on Homestead. I don't know if the water levels were going up there or what, but I noticed a lot of teenage and young mesquite trees.
You have to have shallow water table to have new mesquite trees. A mature tree can run their roots down 50, 60 feet. But
yeah, they're like the tamarisk, they go way down.
And that's one of the things that.
We've got 4 more minutes, so that's
okay.
Yeah, so,
one of our programs, when you start looking at the water district, what are they doing, is conservation as well. We're trying to voluntarily, help people understand the need for conservation, understand what happens when you have tamarisk trees, for instance, and help people to find ways to. One tamarisk tree can
100 to 300 gallons of water
a day.
That's another group that I belong to, the Southern Nye County Conservation District too. So
So we've been working with that group to try to identify things. We've done a mapping of the areas, and then we can now come in after that to help with that water usage issue. We're also interested in water quality issues. So we've got an abandoned well program, orphan and abandoned well program, where we'll make sure that there's not open wells that can lead to contamination of the water. People tend to want to dump things in a hole if they see it. It's just, somebody can dump some pesticides or oil in a abandoned well and contaminate dozens of wells.
Or just pour stuff out in an old abandoned home site or something.
So it's not an issue you want to run around and cap all our wells. If there's any cap wells that you want to do, it's the abandoned ones that could cause damage to the aquifer.
It would
and
be
that's in the future.
Unmaintained.
Unmaintained.
The old abandoned ag wells, and there are some old residential wells around here. Even the annular ring, the outside of the well is where the sanitary seal has started to deteriorate. The water level, instead of coming up and the pipe protecting comes up, then it's just a direct conduit straight down into the aquifer. So these are
to identify that and cap that.
But it's a long process to identify these, because a lot of these really you think are abandoned aren't. They're just not in use.
That's why we say orphan and abandoned. And if we identify them, we try to contact the property owner. We just want to make sure that it has a cap on the well so that people can't dump stuff into it.
And that's another thing too, when people see some of these wells out here, this just happened out on the west side. Somebody had drilled a well out there, excellent well, good casing, good cement. People didn't plan on developing right away, so they just spot welded a steel cap on a big steel plate.
Yeah.
Metal scroungers came and snapped it off. That's the one I told you I had to go out and look at. So now we got an open hole.
Okay.
So, well, it's being corrected, but I'm seeing some of this. They're also on some of these out there. The metal scrappers are coming in and on unattended wells, actually taking the pump and drill strings out.
Okay.
So, and that's
take a $10,000 pump and sell it for a few $100 worth of scrap metal.
Yeah.
And so again, that leaves an open hole. So we're just trying to identify all of these as much as possible, and a lot of it we'd like citizens' help so that we can, at least keep the groundwater
If
clean.
there's an absentee landowner, then we're just, help to find them, and they're usually happy to have the assistance of the water district to get something done and fix
Great.
that.
So as you can see, what we're trying to do is we're not trying to take the water from them, we're actually trying to protect and enhance their water.
Right.
But unfortunately, there is a misconception.
Right. So hopefully we alleviated some of those problems, answered some of your questions, and if you have more questions, 727-7727. I think we're just about out of time, or not. We are. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Daryl, and hopefully we'll be back with you with some more interesting programs. I'm John Pollock, your host, and we'll see you next week. Good night.